Welcome back, listeners. Good to have you. This is the fourth installment of the podcast. I'm talking again with my friend Sam Fogarty. We are talking about inspiration, and yeah, again, it goes in depth in a a few rabbit holes. This was actually recorded back in December, about December 11th, and I think some of the conversation you might find very timely, very yeah, I'll just let you guys have a listen. Let me know what you think in the comments and subscribe if you want or don't. I don't really mind. This is just a bit of fun for me. But yeah, cheers, guys. See you next time.
Inspiration as well.
Yeah,
So I think a pretty relevant topic for life in general, and yeah. So I've got a few ideas on what to talk about there, and I'm sure you do too. I suppose
to be honest, I'm not feeling that inspired today. I'm having a bit of an off day, but we'll see how we go.
well, let's see what spark we can pull.
Yeah, sure.
So I think the magic of inspiration actually is in the uniqueness of a situation. So I think when you meet someone, they are a secret master of something, and if you can recognize it in that moment, you can learn something from them, and so that there is inspiration all around you in various people that you meet in all sorts of different stages of life, whoever they are. Maybe you're ahead of them in various ways, but they're always a master at something,
Mm,
whoever you meet.
yeah,
And so
they're
that's why
they're
I think
master at themselves. Well,
yes,
in a
yes,
way.
that's right. And but like I tend to, like I'm pretty pro life, so I think people have always figured something out, right, with who they are. Like they are
Yeah.
there are various aspects, dimensions of them that like where you should listen to them, right? Because they've thought about it, they've spent years thinking about it, and like it saves you so much brain compute if someone else who's spent years thinking about something can just share their thoughts with you on it. That's just like extraordinarily efficient processing. If so, yeah, I guess I tend to think in that way. Inspiration is available to us every day, from everyone we meet because they're a master at something.
I'm just sort of thinking novelty. I mean, inspiration and novelty sort of go hand in hand, right? You can't be inspired every day. You know, you get caught in the monotony,
Mm,
the banality, and just
yeah,
the
it's
everyday.
tricky.
You get caught in the undertones,
It's
and
tricky.
so when you
Yeah.
meet someone new, it maybe might be inspiring and might light a spark, or, light a fire,
Mm.
and then you're like, but like, do you think there are these figures just every day, just inspiration and
I that's my claim, I guess. The lunch lady who you're getting your sandwich from or something, that she is a master of something,
hmm,
and you may not see it yet. You may like it can take a while to discover what is the thing that this person understands about the universe particularly well, but look for it, I would say, I, because you really don't want to like miss the lesson, right? If the lunch lady who's given you the sandwich has really figured something out, like don't miss it if they say it, so that's why like
so what's sorry, lunch lady, I missed this whole thing.
well, so I think it's to do with informational openness. Okay, so you referenced novelty before, so that's something new that's coming to like new energy sparking a flame.
Don't you think that's what how would you define inspiration? Wouldn't that be?
Yeah, so uh, new energy coming to you, sure, along those lines, but I think something that can help that is informational openness, I suppose.
Can you define informational openness?
So you might step through a room and talk to some people for a while and step out of the room. And did any of that uh, teach you something or help you understand something? And I think that depends on your informational openness to a degree. So it can really depend on how interested you are in what someone's trying to say and your attentional focus at that time. And if you're authentic and you're with them, they can communicate something, and I think that can trigger the flame, trigger the next thing. But
So
mm,
yeah, if I can cut it, like, so I mean, you brought up attention there. I think this is sort of a
mm,
very important subject in this whole thing, like,
for sure.
because there needs to be attention, and especially where attention where we have like an attention poverty or attention deficit sort of thing at the moment in the world, because we're so
Mm,
saturated by everything that is trying to always
hyper stimulation.
constantly grab your
That's it.
attention.
That is a problem of our time.
And so when you're talking about some of the inspirational figures and all
Mm,
the people that are really doing meaningful things, not
mm-hmm,
just novel, not just like we don't I
mm,
mean, there are people, we have long form media, we have that, but like, the attention now, um say, compared to like 100 years ago when people would actually put effort into writing a letter,
yeah.
and that was
The
like
slow thought.
the slow thought, and it sort of created. So I mean, now it sort of
Whereas
comes
now
down
there's
to the.
Twitter.
Mm, do you think that's a bad thing? Do you think that's a good thing? Like what?
No, it is a problem. Yeah, that stuff like the internet, what have you, creates hyperstimulation, and there's a informational battle going on for attention. And yeah, it really, like, the meta nature of that informational warfare that's happening really influences what you're exposed to then. So, for example, whoever controls the algorithms
The
for what
algorithms. I was
shows
about
you
to bring that up. Do
on
you hear
YouTube, on
the?
Google, on Bing, wherever, that has enormous ramification,
And
right?
they're trying to break up Facebook now,
Yes,
right?
it's a very big
Sort
deal.
of.
It is. Like, whoever has your attention in that sense, it's like that they are your religion to a degree.
They have control over you. They have control
Yes.
over like what you see, and like who
Yeah.
you interact with, or at least like they know like exactly precisely how long you like spent
There's a
looking at this
cultural
profile.
impact, basically, of this ripple of information. And so,
So I mean, they are very aware of like attention.
yes.
How do you
So
do you
they
have a
train
remedy to that?
AI to crack this problem, right? Of
Do you?
how.
This is what I'm concerned about, because I don't think AI is going to um crack the problem. I think it's going to make it worse. Like it's going to make things like
Well,
overly saturated and overly.
when you log into the platform, there is a AI whose job it is to relentlessly understand the content that will trap you in the space, right? So, like, your travel through the internet now is being, like, controlled by an AI, as it were, that's like choosing for you the, like, this very specific content that will as trap you as hard, like, that will hypnotize you as powerfully
So
as it
on
can figure out.
what platform? Sorry, was it?
Well, any content distribution platform, like, if they're advanced, like, you don't have to think of it necessarily as insidious per se. It's Netflix doing their job. So,
I mean, it's kind of scary, the sort of algorithms that Netflix sort of
well,
have.
it'll steadily get more and more advanced.
And this is, I'm interested in generative models sort of thing, and they've been, very into personalizing data, or personalizing content, and I'm
That's
like,
right.
and they're also into producing content, and I'm
Yeah.
like, well, when is that going to cross over, where it becomes
At
like,
some point, it will.
do you remember the Black Mirror episode where it was kind of like
I
the
haven't seen the one
like read your own adventure, like it was, like
right
you flip to, it was
where
kind of
it's
like that.
generative
No,
in that
it
way.
wasn't generative. It was, simple trees, like
Mm,
just simple branching.
right.
But
Your choice.
your choice.
Yeah.
But what happens when it's generative?
It's a whole game changer where you can keep relentlessly editing a film. For example, you just keep changing it wherever you want. You branch it wherever you want,
Yeah.
and you create the film dynamically that
Well,
way.
you can put yourself in the film,
Yeah,
right?
you're in the film, other people in the film. You stop, you rewind, you branch it, you change. Uh, you trade people around. Yeah, it's a
Uh,
different paradigm.
this is kind of interesting as well because it was two things happened yesterday that I think that were kind of very consequential and maybe will probably be looked at like as defining moments in history, but we're kind of just under the radar, or not under the radar, but just kind of like, yeah, okay, that it was like Cyberpunk 2077 came out, and like with like was it um you know Elon launched SN8
So I don't know Cyberpunk 2020. Apologies.
2077.
Yeah, I don't know Cyberpunk
Well,
2077.
it's just like a super overhyped game sort of thing.
I see.
So
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I guess I tend to regard games now as part of the hyperstimulation that the universe is trying to utilize to trap me. So I tend to not.
yeah, I mean, but this is their sort of overtaking like film in terms of revenue, right? So this is
Absolutely.
definitely the
My
the
goodness.
future. So
Well, there's a lot of money to be made in making games for sure. Absolutely. But just in terms of my own lifestyle, I just think part of life, trying to avoiding the traps to stop yourself being harvested is
like the Matrix sort of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Like you've got to recognize when you're being exploited. Like the nature of exploitation is that you don't notice when it's happening. That's how you get exploited. And so, like, games feel great, but like the point of them, they're this psychological hypnotic assault that is trying to control you and like keep you trapped in a chair for a long time. And like metabolically, it's killing you.
No, but I mean, suspension of disbelief, that is all of what movies are. So what, it's no different than movies. People don't go like
That's
into a
right.
game and sort of
I,
become
I, I
so.
guess in the same way, I no longer seek out movies so
Do
much.
you remember that scare? Like there was that scare after I think Columbine where it was like video games are evil. They're like brainwashing
Yeah,
and it was just like you look at the studies and it's just like there's no correlation there. It's
that's right.
just people that took inspiration. But then you're like,
Mm.
okay, well, like Fox News is now doing to what that generation said computer games were doing to us, just completely brain. And you're just like, okay, all right.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a whole lot of politicizing and propaganda warfare going on in the hyperstimuli of the
Do
universe.
you? Yeah, I mean, we can get into the memosphere if you want. Like,
I go for it, Drew. What do you want to say in the memosphere?
I mean, there's yeah, I've kind of been getting into politogram lately, and it's a different space. Like
What is politogram?
it's just politics on Instagram, and
Ah, I
it's
see.
I mean it just feels so like like I'm trying to sort of be open minded and be like, okay, they're trying to create a message, they're trying to um you know present something. Yeah, a lot of time it just feels like you're just sort of trying to get a jab in. Like I mean, there is discourse there, but there's not. It's not a.
It's not
It's
serious.
not formal. It's not serious. It's not taken serious. It's just brainwashing. It just seems to just
Yeah,
literally like memes, just
that's right.
overdrive your mind and sort of not brainwash you, but like sort of yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair to be brainwashed to say that like a meme I don't think is a reliable information source at all. So, in fact, it was specifically what disinformation campaigns I think have
No,
often used.
exactly. I mean, a lot of this sort of these techniques were actually developed, or like were
Propaganda.
probably developed as propaganda.
Yeah, like the old propaganda poster that you would see during the world wars about what are the Yeah, our enemies are evil and crazy and stupid. Like, and they're just propaganda posters, and a lot of memes are just that. Like, they're not
it
more
it
than,
reduces someone something to, or like a concept, to such
yeah,
a simple, like, one-dimensional kind of form. And even like there are like, politogram is supposed to have like many dimensions, or and I mean, the thing is, people are like, oh no, memes are just fun, like, but like they actually,
well,
people now do
people are
take it
trying.
for, like,
Yeah,
as a serious sort of like
but
source of truth sort of thing.
that's right.
And now this is why it has been weaponized, and like it
Yes.
is being exploited in every sort of way for
Yeah. It's an
it is
informational
warfare. I mean,
compartmentalization idea. How do I how do I communicate something that's particularly helpful when it doesn't necessarily need to be true?
mm.
It's just you're trying to communicate a feeling or something. Uh
I watched that doco, Feels Good Man. It's a super good film, just about how the Pepe meme got corrupted by the alt right sort of thing, and it just goes through like the
sure.
history of it. The Pepe meme.
Yes.
So it was like, um, and the artist actually wanted to you know try and sort of write this sort of,
But
I suppose,
discovered
like,
you
feeling like a sense of responsibility, and just trying to kind of write, how this is just being completely co-opted and overtaken. And yeah, like, I mean, it was quite touching. It was trying to be uplifting and everything, but you just sort of think, no, this is like a system now. Like, everyone is engaged. They know how to hack your attention. This is just going to move on to the next meme. It's going to just, like, you know, no one. It's systemic. It's not
so
about the one
what's
meme.
the
Like,
answer? If memes are informational propaganda, what's the solution?
the solution is just people pay more attention and sort of think for themselves, and that, is just kind of long form discourse. Just having
Yeah.
you know a discussion about it,
Not relying on memes.
being open to another person's opinion,
Hmm.
like, and not instantly just sort of like falling into judgment, and sort of criticizing, or getting caught in filter bubbles, because it is like,
Yeah.
we talked about hacking reward function, where it's, you just fall into uh this one mode of behavior. And I mean,
Hmm.
that's completely what filter bubbles are.
Yeah. I think the most dangerous areas of the internet are forums, basically, where they trick you into thinking that something that's extreme and crazy is normal because lots of people have self-filtered to be in the same forum.
Mm.
So you yeah, you can be tricked by a forum into thinking that something insane
Yeah, I
is
mean, this is
ordinary.
how a lot of, like, jihadis are even radicalized these
Mm.
days. And the weird thing is, like, sort of, what, nationalists, white nationalists, are sort of using the exact same techniques as, like, ISIS was using for recruiting. Just is to it normalizes that kind of behavior, or that mindset, by just completely making you having tunnel vision, and
Mm.
not seeing someone's else's opinion, and having the
Yeah.
diversity of thought.
Well, it's a tricky one. Figuring out where correctly you should put your attentional focus, and it's easy to spot the sin in others, but I guess I think generally the trick is if you see the sin in others, there's a shadow of it within you.
Mm.
So I always tell myself that. Yeah, but you know, we think, all right, these other people they haven't figured out how to control their informational consumption. They've been tricked by mainstream media or alternate news or whoever they are. They've been tricked, but like we can see how they're being exploited in that way.
Mm.
But the whole point of exploits is that you don't see the one that's doing you. So always it's about discovering, what's the one that I am missing about myself. I think, and That's the real trick to it. Like,
So, I'm gonna sort of segue to machine learning and
mm,
sort of deep network sort of thing because attention. I'm not sure whether this is a long stretch of a metaphor, but attention in sort of deep networks or any sort of neural network um, deals with just sort of making it more focused, making it cutting out the noise,
yeah, well,
making it more efficient.
mm,
And uh, and do you think that is what sort of attention is like? Sort of
well, so uh, this issue of human attention and the filters of the human experience are a very big deal because everyone's trapped in the human condition with regards to their attention. That they're trapped inside this cage of evolutionary biases that make them think some things are much more important than other things and prevent them from seeing what's real. So, like, it it's a tricky one. You've got to try to work out what are the natural built-in biases of the system and subtract it away and see what's remaining, I think. And that way try to wrestle attention to just what's objectively important. And all right. So
how
you
can you be always objective though?
well, no, you can't be, but perhaps you can be some of the time. Like sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah, it's good, but
Well, okay. Let me ask you this, Drew. How many hours do you think you've researched how your lungs work?
my lungs,
Your
my
lungs.
not that much to be
Zero?
honest.
Would
Okay,
it be zero?
I mean not zero, no non zero, like but pretty much insignificant.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, you would know that very detailed information about your lungs would be, well, not your lungs, but human lungs, would be available to you easily online from your Infinity internet device available to you, right? So that's easy.
Sure.
So you got limitless access to get more information than, say, any doctor would know about lungs like a century ago. But it's never come to your attention that that is important. Now, obviously, lungs are a vital component for the human body.
Yeah.
So absolutely vital. So if they don't work, you'll die. All that. But it's there's other things that are more important to you than discovering about that. Just discovering about how your own body works. That could that are always more important than, for example, learning about your lungs. And
Sure. I mean, but I have limited resources in terms of attention. So why should I spend it on lungs? Like what specifically?
well, it's your future though. It's like,
Yeah, but okay. So I'm sort of thinking like Red Queen argument, where it's sort of an
okay,
arms race of, if you take that in terms of attention, um, because like you know nowadays we have more information in our phone
yeah, you got
than
like an infinity device.
we pretty much have an infinity bar. We have more
Yeah,
information than like the U.S. president had like 20 years ago,
that's right.
like at his absolute sort of disposal. Like the most. So you're sort of thinking like how do we? And so this is kind of
Yeah.
where I'm kind of like getting this sort of anxiety of like it is just sort of delegating resources in your
Well, like
like
yeah,
delegating energy and attention.
like in your hand is the infinity device, but to what does your attention go? And the human condition pulls us in many standard directions. But I suppose my claim is that it makes us ignore things that you might think objectively were really important. Like it's sort of like the stuff that just allows me to continue to function. I could look that up, but we don't necessarily ever do that. Even though we've got the infinity device in our hands, and Uh, it
Sure. There's productivity. Like, how do you do that though? Like, I mean, you always fall into the
doesn't
like you're into like sort of
longevity.
well, no,
Yeah.
but like productivity hacking and
No, but also just longevity. Just this
yeah,
idea
yeah,
of
yeah.
there's a big long life ahead where we could be crushing it and be healthy and
And
all that.
you are crushing it, right? You're killing
Cheers,
it.
man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I I find it interesting the human condition and what and yeah. Uh, so I suppose I have a bias, maybe a false bias, but I think there's maybe more time at stake than people realize. And so, like, maybe people think, oh, there's only a few years here and there that are at stake. But I think maybe there's like decades at stake, perhaps.
I mean, that's a huge anxiety. Also, going back to the Red Queen sort of argument is, evolutionary. We're
What
really,
is the Red Queen argument?
I mean, it's just basically like adaptation and evolution sort of creates an arms race between like parasites or like just your sort of your environment.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of it's taken from Alice in Wonderland where it's the Red Queen is like running as fast as she can or whatever, and she just goes nowhere.
I
So
see.
it's this idea of like an evolutionary arms race where everyone is sort of
Yeah.
being, and that's what pulls ahead. Like because there are cycles. Anyone predator prey sort of
Yeah.
cycles, right? The there's a
Absolutely.
lot of sort of harmonics and a lot of sort of equilibrium.
Everything is cycles. There are cycles within ourselves, and we are within cycles within the grander universe.
Yeah.
And all that is stable is cycles. They're the things that are the not cycles, but they're not stable, so you don't see them. They're like the explosions between the milliseconds of the universe are not cycles per se, but
Yeah, so I think what I was sort of getting at is that evolutionary, like, I mean, we're not really supposed to be around after procreating. Like,
yeah,
there's no sort of
there's
evolutionary reason.
barriers to living
I mean,
forever.
yeah, like it's not like
There's at least 7 problems that you need to solve in order to
mm,
live for extra centuries.
sure,
And
yeah.
but there's not necessarily a huge number of problems beyond that first 7.
I mean, the problem is because living forever it doesn't create a
Oh,
diverse
well,
genes pool, right? Like if you have
yeah,
like,
but
but
no one's gonna really live forever. I mean, come on, like, yeah, no one's gonna like. You're not gonna float in a vat for millions of years and literally keep going and going and going,
well,
right?
this is
So
what
no
I'm
one's
saying.
gonna
Like,
actually live
but
forever.
like
But
if you can like crack that code, right, then diversity comes through just thought. Like, so diversity comes through the memetics and the meme sphere sort of thing. So this is why I was kind of
I see. Yes. Well,
because like you're not, and then it's sort of like a ship of Theseus sort of problem. Like, are you really like the same person as you
no,
were? Like,
I'm definitely not. I change. It's because I reject identity, actually. So some people double down on identity, and I think it's a huge mistake. Uh, Almost every time someone's posting on Facebook, they're trying to represent something perhaps about themselves and their relationship to the universe, and it's sort of like, I double down on me being this way as compared to everyone else, and trying to get this sense of more self-righteousness and that kind of thing. And you can play identity, you can double down, but I don't think it really helps. I think it's better to take the other path. And so I try to shed identity, and the more of it I shed, then within a situation I shouldn't be feeling limitations, right? Because I haven't made all these claims about who I am with regards to the universe. So there shouldn't be bumps or knots or like me thinking something's impossible because I haven't established an identity. So why would I think something's
so this is
impossible?
kind of a Buddhist, or it is sort of
Yeah,
like a
you destroy the notion of
ego death,
self-identity.
ego
Yeah,
death,
you blow it up because it doesn't help
and
you
also like
actually.
psychedelics is sort of
Yeah,
a good tool for
yeah,
that.
yeah. however it is that you get there, there's a way I think to appreciate that claims of identity don't actually help you, and they make it harder.
Yeah,
And yeah,
because like I mean, mostly identity is based on
you,
socially some social hierarchy or something, and you just sort of
you
feel like it creates pretty much a lot of the anxieties of the world is just feeling socially anxious and where you are, your position, and the relief of that is ego death is um you feel sort of at peace with that. You're not is
well, if there's no knots to grab onto, then you shouldn't feel anxious about something. It's sort of part of it. Whereas if you create definitive rules, then at some point you'll do something that's in conflict to this idea of yourself. And then what does that mean then about who you are if you're taking actions that are different to the idea in your head of your identity? And the conflict, it just all stops making sense. And then you can have anxiety about who you will be in the future, who you were in the past, and you can be caught up in, I think, kind of delusionary rumination or what have you about stuff that none of it's real. Um,
is this sort of social anxiety, or what sort of anxiety is this? Like,
so you might wonder, in my past, was I a good person or something like that, where you're trying to score yourself, you're trying to have an identity, you're trying to figure out the kind of tattoos that you can scribe about what it all meant. And you can make up a story, but the story probably isn't real. And so the point of rumination on a lot of these things often, I think, is not really there, but it can distract you from the present. So I guess I would tend to think that people should find ways to try to end rumination and rather just move forward in their lives. And so engaging in ideas, you're trying to discover an identity of your past self to explain all that happened or something like that. Like that's just
so being introspective is what you're saying, or
no, just you can be looking for something that doesn't exist. And so in that way, be chasing ghosts around when and so lose being present in the moment because you're too busy ruminating about something that
well, I mean, a lot of meditation is just about concentrating on breath because it's just concentrating on the now sort of thing. So
that's right. And I think to get there requires losing the ego to a degree, right? If you're worried about your identity, your social hierarchy, if you're anxious about that, that will intrude in your thoughts when you're trying
yeah,
to meditate.
but I mean, these are just thought patterns that have just developed, since early childhood sort of thing.
Yeah,
So like to rewire
to
but I mean, we
unlearn
do have
is the challenge.
brain plasticity is a crazy thing, and I've
Yes,
always thought it was crazy that you can like with meditation you can actually change your brain structure.
yeah,
Like, isn't that weird? Like, isn't that just
it's
like
beautiful.
you can by just not thinking, but pretty much not thinking, like
Mm.
like change yours. Like,
I
isn't
th-
that
I think
like
it lets you finish thoughts off. You can start a thought and not finish it, and it's wrong because you haven't quite figured out the ending. So I think
hmm,
meditation helps you to finish thoughts off, and so then you let things go, and the butterfly flaps free, and it's
yeah.
gone now. And you're getting rid of the knots to a degree.
But I mean, this is the thing with like consciousness is very recursive, because you can't think about consciousness without thinking about consciousness, right? And so I've always thought, it's like this just room of mirrors, and like room mirrors in a maze, and you're just like
Yes,
running around it with like smoke. So it's there's people have a lot of cobwebs, you know,
for sure.
and to try and sort of clean that out and make it more um it it does take I suppose just sort of being free from that, just concentrating on the now, on focusing on
If you
what is
can,
happening.
I think so. Yeah, but
So do you have like a meditation routine?
Well, it's something that I'm working on, but I don't think that I'm very good at it yet.
I don't think I am as well.
Yeah. So there's nothing to brag about for me, but I think it's about trying to, I guess, enable yourself to have time in your day, in your week, what have you, where you are not slave to the thoughts that are required of you for a lot of situations. You're not so caught up in something you have to do or watching TV or on your phone or whatever
Yeah,
it is. Your
yeah.
thoughts aren't trapped in something
So I
else.
actually saw there was like a competitive kind of meditation. I'm not sure what it's called, but there's like this uh these sort of yeah, like sort of like the Olympics of meditation where they actually put on like I'm not sure if it's like EEG
Mm,
or some sort of like neural interface where
yeah.
they check your all
Well,
your alpha waves and your delta waves and you
that's
like
ironic, I guess, because like partly you're trying to completely escape from stuff related to ego, stuff related to
I know
competition
that was my
and
point sort of
identity.
thing. So
So
it's
if
like imagine
yeah,
that like you're getting up on the podium like cracking the champagne, being like,
yeah,
"Yo, I won the meditation."
I'm the most at peace out of any of your suckers.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah, like there's really this advantage to realizing to escape from competition, and hopefully meditation is part of that from people where you're not competing in that moment.
And I think one of the things in the world that is socially constructed and is not actually reality is this idea of competition, like the zero sum sort of mentality where people are really driven by just like being competitive and thinking that if someone wins, someone loses, right? Um,
But you can't control the external world, Thirdry.
yeah, but like you look at the resources, and I don't think it's the world you need to control. I think it's human nature.
But like when you see that things are wrong, and you might think, okay, it's the world that needs to change.
It's not the world. It's human genetics that needs to change.
Human genetics? Well, I mean, they will change inevitably.
I mean, we have these traits, these evolutionary traits, and like we have
Yeah,
a pre
competition built into us.
predisposition
Because
because of
if you win, maybe you died. Like the people who lost didn't breed. You know, they died.
exactly that. So these are completely
So
ingrained. But you
so
look at
that's
it,
our legacy. Like
yeah. But
you
you
know,
look at the resources, and you kind of like, well, if you were smart about it and you kind of were able to distribute this, like not even that, but like have a sort of, we don't live in a I mean, we live in a finite universe, but like in terms of resources and
our
abundance,
universe is not necessarily finite.
yeah, yeah. So I'm just sort of saying solutions are probably not finite, or well,
I
everything's finite.
mean,
I mean,
we've got a finite planet, but I think the universe has been here for a long time.
yeah,
So
it doesn't care about us. It's just like,
I think of it as effectively infinite, the large. Yeah. Well, I just think like if you look outwards and you see problems, if if in relation to that you think the idea is that the universe needs to reorganize itself to suit what your vision is, like that you will be disappointed ultimately. It's probably not going to just do that, you know.
I'm not asking the universe to do anything. Like,
But right, okay. But what is the response then? You see this problem of the universe, this unfairness of the resources.
yeah, I mean, it's just collective action. It's just, you know, uh, developing consensus. I mean, there's multiple routes you can take.
Mm,
I think eventually, you can't fight against human nature. Why would
no.
you try to? But at least you can create, you know, a space where people are more salient and more understanding of their own biases, right?
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah.
So I mean, you are. I've always sort of picked up that you are quite. You believe in sort of a competitive hierarchy, or like a winner and a loser.
Well,
Uh,
what do my beliefs matter? It's just what is real. Like I can have a belief about it, but so I think my beliefs are not the story. The story is what is real.
yeah. So what is real? Is that just
Well,
a
I
normative
think what
thing?
is
Like,
real.
is it normative? Is it just a consensus among your peers, or is it like
Well,
more?
you like what you were asking about before about winners and losers and competition. I
Yeah.
think that is real. That in reality, you look out in nature, a wolf eats the lamb or doesn't. One of those things happens.
Sure, sure. Yeah,
So,
a wolf eats a
but
lamb, but
so
we are
like,
not like in a Hobbesian sort of world. Like
what do you mean?
we can
You
have
think we're
alter. See, I is we've had this sort of disagreement for a while, or this sort of this disparity of thought, uh, where I'm not being completely charitable and altruistic, where I'm saying that just having a basic sort of appreciation for you know like human existence sort of thing, like having
I think
like
that I do. Yeah.
yeah, like altruism is not like a
Yeah.
but sometimes in some circles it is kind of can be taken as like a weakness or whatever you know
I don't think altruism is weakness. I think altruism is strength often enough that if you're giving things away, it surely to some degree flags you're powerful
but
in a
won't
sense.
the oh well
So
sure.
then it's not necessarily a weak thing to do at all to be giving away stuff. Like not necessarily. It might just mean you're overflowing. So yeah, like altruism isn't a bad thing at all, man.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't know anyone who would like disagree with that. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you're a complete psychopath, and they wouldn't probably like um, you know, actually say that. But um, so I mean, what I'm more saying is, allocation of resources, you know, and you are like playing within a system or hierarchy, or you understand there's a
Yeah.
game, or there's like you can have a
So like in the dating world.
yeah, sure. I mean, social statusing,
Yeah.
like like
Like in the dating world.
yeah. But also, this is the idea with the Red Queen is like now virtual signaling has become sort of almost like a weapon sort of thing. So like even now you can't kind of escape the idea that it is sort of this arms race, and everyone is just sort of having these sort of the same tendencies, the
Well,
same sort of selfish sort of.
ha- okay. Isn't there a competition playing out? And if there is, how else can it be other than an arms race? So take acting, for example.
Mm,
Take a there's a movie, it's a huge movie, there's a lot of money, it's like Terminator 17, and maybe you want to be the star. And if you want to be the star in that film, you're competing against whoever else
sure, there's
wants to
nothing wrong
compete.
with
And
competition.
this, like, well, you keep kind of flagging people thinking of stuff as being a competition, as being inaccurate or wrong or immoral or something.
I'm saying ultimately, like in terms of resources, like
But, like, isn't there a competition? Isn't it just what reality is that there's competition for resources, for things?
yeah, but like you look at the amount of resources that there are, and you look at the amount of people that there are, like like it's not, you can have competition amongst social status, sure, but that shouldn't play into the idea that you're not allowed, you know, to distribute sort of. Okay,
Okay,
so
so there should be more welfare. is what you're talking
No, no.
about.
Okay, so you hate this idea. You hate
I
this
don't
idea of charity.
necessarily
You do.
hate.
You've said this before. I'm going to bring up
I
like I've talked about this before. Keynes, right? The economic prospects of our grandchildren, sort of thing. Wrote in
Mhm.
100 and something years ago, 101
Mhm.
years ago or something, and it talks about how uh and Keynes isn't exactly like a full leftist, but he's sort of talking about how the distribution, like with automation and like the way that mechanization and like industry is going, that within 100 years, like where we are right now, there's going to be enough capital in the world and enough like resources for people to sort of live like happily, like
Right.
even including
Right.
like population growth and whatever. There's
Yeah.
so, and the thing is, his predictions were true.
Mm.
What he underestimated was human insatiability. That people are just greedy. They just hoard and they just like wanna like
Okay.
have something sort of over someone. So
So that what you're saying is that the problem is human greed.
human insatiability is, I mean, it's not a problem. It's just our makeup, right?
It sounds like you're talking about a problem, and that the problem
I
is
know you
something to
hate this.
do.
You hate
I
this like charity. You like
I'm
the
just trying to
but
understand what you're saying, man. And in order to hate something, I've got to understand what you're saying. And it sounds like you're talking about greed and like, you know,
yeah.
self-interest or something as being the problem. But I don't think that I necessarily hate it. No, I don't think that
Okay.
that's fair. No, I'm trying to describe what I think is real, and like I might be wrong, but like it's not my fault what's real. If it is what's real, like that's just reality. It's not my fault if I'm describing it, right?
I'm sure I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm not taking aim
Because
at you.
like, well, you're describing the competitions that are playing out there and the distribution of resources, but you're sort of characterizing it as if the story is about me, but I don't think that it
Oh, dude, I was
is.
not taking aim at you at all.
Like, well, okay, well, I like my relationship to charity. Like I engage in charity all the time, so I don't think that there's a problem with support structures and helping people or that kind of
The
thing.
main anxiety is just sort of this cultural, a culture of dependency, and that's not really true. It's like they've done studies on UBI and stuff. I mean, what happens when automation just becomes completely okay, so this is probably something interesting that we should talk about is job displacement and just automation in the workforce,
Well, it will make many people unemployed,
and
definitely.
people aren't even actually realized because we have this sort of hangover from the industrial revolution where we think automation is just going to be like blue collar factory workers and stuff, when really like machine learning, deep learning is going to more take out clerical bureaucratic sort of work like you know pencil pushers and work, doctors and lawyers, like the things that you wouldn't have actually properly even considered, sort of thing. So
Yeah,
there's going to be a very strange sort of
there's going to be
like
mass unemployment
altering.
from automation. Yeah,
I mean, once they crack transportation, right, that's a huge industry.
yeah, very, very big. There's definitely going to be a lot of
And
unemployment.
so what do you do with that? Do you just sort of say, all right, get out of here?
No, no, I don't think anyone thinks that. Like, because buildings get set on fire if people.
Exactly. So this is kind of one of my sort of motivating sort of points of actually, researching my thesis was sort of, interested in creativity and understanding what's like the least automated job, right? Like it's probably like
Mm,
an artist sort of thing.
I don't know.
Like, well, like,
Uh,
it's
not
the
convinced of
expression
that
of the,
because the ability to random if part of it is to randomly roll a dice, the machine can do that too. It can randomly roll a dice as well.
yeah.
So you've got to be careful if that you don't accidentally mistake that as being irreplaceable. Um,
But I mean, an artist's role is to have randomness, but not. It has to
yeah,
be tell a story, and
yeah,
that deals with you know a cultural history,
yep.
and
I
so there's no.
Well, I think a machine that has seen a million paintings will understand us a great deal
Sure, but human psychology will say, I don't like this because it's,
because you know who painted it.
yeah, it's like patronage. You are more interested in the
That
story.
there's, yeah, an invisible quality. It's true, though, it is true in art that there's this invisible quality to it that makes all the difference. I
Well,
could show you a picture of something, and if it happens to be Captain Cook's thing, it's more important.
so have you
You
seen Hitler's paintings?
I think I've seen some of them.
I mean, they're pretty kitsch. I mean, they're not bad. They're like, it's
Mm.
like, he's, better painter than me, but I'm just like, okay,
Mm.
you take that context and you sort of realize that, and then you're like, okay, well, how do I?
It really makes a difference to how you think about that painting, that invisible quality of the creation process
Yeah.
for it. Uh, I guess what I see online now, instead of just showing you some piece of art that someone's made, instead they show you the creation process for the piece of art that they show at the very end. And it's because they're trying to show, look how hard it was to make this thing that you're now looking at. It was so hard, and that's what they're trying to show off.
So it's about the journey, right? It's about the
Mm.
process, and this is a lot of what art theory is about. Is process art and even just the ideas that came to sort of to define that, and even just putting the artist at the forefront, like performance art and everything. So it is sort of about, in a way, talking about the essence of human spirit. Not to get too. I mean, some people just like pretty pictures, but
Yeah. Well, the artist can't disconnect from the audience. Yeah. So an an artist is specifically appealing to like human beings. We really see someone's theory as to who a human is or who their main audience is in the work that they produce. So every piece of advertising that you see is someone's theory about what will appeal to a specific demographic. So it's someone's theory about the human condition. And the same is true for art as well. It's not a random pile of sticks. It's trying to speak to people.
sometimes it is a random pile of sticks. I mean,
Well,
sometimes that is
that does
what
not
they're saying.
last.
But you have to understand, it is the thought behind that random pile of sticks, right? Like, it is the idea that someone has thought to put if there was just a random pile of
mm,
sticks, and the people to go, okay, well, it was the idea the artist had to put that random, you know this
uh,
is like, conceptual art, right?
well, all right. So I was hearing about Egyptian art, which is to say, you'd have these pharaohs' tombs, and they've got their treasure, right? And they've got different bits and pieces, and all the stuff that was gold got stolen and melted down. So every scrap of art that was made from gold was destroyed. So the only art that gets left over is actually the art that's like the least valuable. So uh, yeah, it was somewhat fascinating to hear about how the scraps and bits and pieces that are left over from these ancient tombs are all the bits that were not valuable enough to destroy.
Yeah, but I mean, sort of Egyptian art, or sort of ancient, any sort of archaeological artifact, they didn't really have a concept of art. This is modern art has only really been sort of defined since, like modernity. And before that, it was just sort of seen as this sort of symbol of wealth, patronage, sort of thing. I mean, from the Renaissance, it was like, basically like the Medici family that kind of created this idea of, like in Florence or whatever, they they had this sort of free market, this liberal economy, where they allowed a lot of artists to actually sort of create and express themselves. Before then, art was mostly about just sort of religious sort of
Yeah.
you know icons. Like
But that's
just
coherence. That art will last. So if your art is the same as the other art, that's all in the same building and it's all kind of saying the same thing and everyone's kind of on the same page, then it'll last. The statue will stay there.
yeah.
If it's not, if it's outside the
But
box.
there's a difference between the cultural context of art, which changes all the time, and like visual culture or just sort of like aesthetics.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can talk about my influences, my inspiration, sort of.
Please do, Drew. What are your
Well,
inspirations?
like I mean, like to begin with, it's more like going through undergrad. It was like Boreard sort of thing, like relational aesthetics, and he had this idea of like the semionaut, which I really caught on to, which is the idea of that artists nowadays. There's like we're in an information surplus, right? There's so much information that you don't even have to like create anything original. All you have to do is just navigate through pathways in culture, like become like a DJ or like a just like fusing, mashing up like all these sort of different ideas. And I was like really caught up in that idea, and
Being an art DJ.
well, like finding pathways through culture rather than because it's kind of like, well, what are you actually trying to do with art? Are you just trying to create a commodity that's just going to play into the same sort of you know markets and the same, like, you're not doing anything revolutionary, you're not doing anything interesting, or I mean, sometimes they have sort of an aesthetic interest, but there's no kind of like vanguard kind of idea behind it. But yeah, so I had that kind of idea, and then I was like, you know but I probably pushed that to a bit of an extent. But uh yeah, I think I've kind of fallen off the sort of art radar at the moment, which is kind of a kind of a pity or a shame, sort of.
Well, yeah, don't disconnect from your roots, man.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, stay in touch with your fellow artists, I think.
So this kind of actually did take, because I became interested in sort of deep learning and machine learning, and sort of the idea that what a machine could possibly, is it possibly creative, sort of thing. And there's these things called, I mean, the Turing test, right? There's also like the Lovelace test. Lovelace was like first ever programmer, sort of thing, and she had the Lovelace test is basically this sort of idea that she had, whereas like, can a machine ever originate something? You know, basically be creative, and that was her test of whether the difference between what we can do as humans and a machine can do. Um, uh,
Mm.
but and then there's a whole history of sort of information aesthetics, or people trying to quantify it, and people trying to sort of put a formula in it, and I kind of get caught up in that. I'm like, and it's sort of draining, and well, it's not draining, but like when you try to like create a formula for like novelty and creativity, and try to reduce it to something that is,
How do you reliably create novelty?
I mean, you can definitely uh,
Reliably.
well, so say you're training again, and you have like
Uh huh.
a distribution, right? The idea of creating novelty is just sort of going from the current style of that, the current distribution of the current style, and then sort of deviating just ever so slightly. Because if you deviate too far, you'll just be random, right? So say you go back into like the you know 1800s. If you sort of brought out modern art there, they would have thought you were crazy, sort of thing. Like they would have just gone lock them up. Um,
So novelty is small deviation from existing ideas.
yeah, small deviations from the medium that creates like a coherent sort of pathway or a coherent sort of narrative. And I mean, and you can reduce it to a formula.
Hmm.
And um,
The formula for novelty.
I mean, like the thing is, yeah, you can just go out there and be completely wild and crazy, but people be like,
I think that's like the Will Ferrell approach. You stop having a shame filter. You just be really, really loud, and you never feel shame for being the center of attention. You're just like saying everything that's in your head. And
sure, but I mean, that's still placed within a cultural context. Like at least people give them leeway. If anyone did that, like just they would be like, okay, get out of here.
well, yeah, you have to, I don't know, figure out the version that works. But yeah, with comedians like Will Ferrell, they're just rapping off the top, as it were. Like a lot of the filming that he does, that he's just making it up as he
No,
goes.
so
The scripts.
but there is still a context to that. You have to understand the context because you can do non sequiturs. And
Mm.
like so GPT, like GPT-3 or GPT-2 can do crazy non sequiturs, and they can be hilarious. But like it still doesn't have like the context of the situation, sort of thing. So like, what does it make a difference if it's like written by a machine or a human?
I think the machines will write it in the end and will do a great job of it.
So machines writing comedy will be
They'll do a wonderful job.
That's going to be so weird because it's almost the complete opposite of what a machine should be. Like,
A
imagine.
machine's not meant to be funny. It's not
Mm,
meant to understand humor because it shouldn't know enough about our culture to know what is funny.
exactly.
Hmm. Well, there are certain jokes that really work for me that I think a machine could keep pushing the button for, and it would like it wouldn't be too hard to keep on pushing that button.
Mm.
Like many of the jokes of like The Simpsons or what have you, they're kind of the same thing over again.
You create a formula. You find a method, and you stick to that. I mean, that's just more like part of the script writing process. If you're dealing with like timelines and corporate overheads, or people. But I mean, that's, yeah. So being creative in that sort of environment, I suppose, is sort of a bit difficult. So yeah, I mean, maybe um, that could. So this is the idea of augmenting it, sort of. So it's sort of like because straight off the bat, um, you know, a large scale language transformer is not going to be able to just know in what specific context something is funny. But when give it when you have the choice of like it's kind of like spell check, but for jokes. It's like,
Mm.
right.
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
This is a very
Could you train a machine to recognize how funny something is? Well,
this is
that's
this is
that's hard.
I'm just
Yeah.
this is not a funny conversation to be talking about like
Well, yeah. I mean, there's something elusive there. In order to know what the humor is, you must know sort of what the irony is, what the extremes are. So,
yeah, it's
what's the edge
so
you're
many.
riding, and and there's nuance to it.
Hmm.
So
And is that just about having like a dimension to
yeah, like I
culture, like
think
having
I'm
more.
not, how do I say this, like racist against computers from being able to understand what we understand. Like just because they're a computer doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to understand what we understand.
Well, there was that chatbot by, was it IBM or something, that they were training it off tweets, and they quickly took it offline because it just became super racist.
Sure, I think it was probably just slamming words together. I don't think
Well,
it wasn't literally racist.
yeah,
It doesn't really know
it was just
the
biased.
meanings of those things that it was
It
saying.
was just biased data, something. It was just talking about.
Yeah, but
It was talking about the things that were getting most attention, and these are these sort of echo chambers that sort of create these sort of ideas, and the people that try to push the influence.
yeah, well, they'll all try, right? In the informational warfare. they will all try to push influence.
Yeah. So is like, what would be the antidote to that?
I guess I I think a person should be very aware of the hyperstimulation that's going on with yeah, all that's out there online, and trying to be aware of your personal biases, and all that can maybe help pierce through the veil.
I like that. Pierce through the veil.
Mm.
It's poetic.
Cheers, man. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. All right, thank you,
Peace
Sam.
out, people.